All right, I'm here with Dolly. Dolly, yes. And this is Dolly's roadmap to success. Now, we just got done filming the video above, and so I want to kind of go over a little bit more on that video because that was not my best work. And part of it is because she's really not set up for success. So I talked about at the beginning of the video, before you do that sort of activity, you want to make sure that you get her a proper amount of exercise. And we talked about this earlier in the session. You might find that a certain number of fetches or doggy stairmasters, as we went over, or set games or whatever it is, sets her up for success. So we want to find the Goldilocks amount, not too much, not too little. So we exercise her before we're going to do that activity. And then before we do that activity, we'd also want to have her not be so aroused when the harness goes on. So can you hand me your harness?
I'll give you this.
There you go. Dolly, come here. Dolly. Well, of course, she's not super aroused now. But when her guardian picked this up originally, she was just bouncing off the walls. Yes, you're not going to be so excited. She said, no, I burned a lot of energy. So what I would do is, let's say that this, can you see this in the shot?
No.
It doesn't have to. So basically, let's say the harness is hanging here. I'd walk over to where the harness is. Actually, the harness is on the floor usually, right? So I'd walk over where it is, tell her to sit. When she sits, then I would start reaching for the harness. And let's say the harness is right here. So Dolly, sit. Yes. And then I reach for the harness and I pull my arm back. I say yes and give her a treat. Then I reach again. Yes.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. Yeah. Come here, Dolly. Dolly. Yes. So we'll talk about how to deal with this. All right. So let's say, we reach for the harness, pull our arm back, say yes, and give her a treat as long as she stayed in a sit. And so I might reach for it once, yes, treat. Reach, yes, treat. But she's staying in a sit. If she gets up, I say sit. Reach, yes, treat. So we're just making this into an activity. We're teaching the dog what we want them to do. One of the things I found as a dog behavior expert is most of the time when dogs misbehave, it's because we haven't actually communicated what we do want them to do. We just assume they're not going to do the thing that's undesirable, but that's not realistic expectation to have. So what we're saying is, when I want to put the harness on you, I want you to sit over here. And we practice this independent of taking her out for a walk. So we take away that excitement, which is going to make it harder. So we get to the point where eventually you can tell her to sit, reach and pick up the harness, put it back down, yes, and give her a treat. Eventually sit, reach, pick it up, put it on her, attach, collapse it, clip it, yes, and give her the treat. And then sit down and we watch TV or write a song or do some art or whatever it is we're doing, and we hang out. And if she's aroused, she's running around the house, we wait for her to settle down. When she kind of gets, then we can take it off, put it back, and then repeat that. So you want to try to do that like 3 to 5 times a day, if not more, until it just becomes easy. You don't have to tell her to sit multiple times. You just tell her to sit, reach over, pick it up, put it on. She stays seated, and she's not so aroused. Because now, only 1 out of every maybe 5 times that you put this on do we actually go for a walk. So we're taking away that excitement level. Now, the other thing I like to do is something I call a training for attention. So I can say, sit, yes, treat. Then I would open the door. She gets up, sit, yes, treat. Then I'd walk through the door, sit, yes, treat. Close the door. She gets up, sit, yes, treat. Walk down to the bottom of the stairs. And you could probably stop in the middle of the stairs, take a couple steps, stop, yes, treat. What are we doing? We're asking her to do something that she knows, that we've taught in a classroom in a calm environment, and then rewarding her for doing it. And we're doing it every step or two. So we might it might take us a couple of days before we can get to the bottom of the stairs with her where she actually listens. Because if I say sit and she doesn't sit within 2 seconds, I'm not going to ask multiple times. I'm going to turn around and walk back up and close the door, drop the harness or leash, and just go back to do what I was doing. Once she indicates that she's too aroused to sit down, I'm not going to ask multiple times. It's not that she's bad. She's overstimulated. She is thinking about what's coming next. So I'm going to help her by not having anything come next. Once you get to the point where you can't listen, then we don't move forward anymore. And it might be like the first couple times you can only go outside the door. And then as soon as you can take a step, she won't listen. You come back in, drop the leash. After a while, you'll take 3 steps, 5 steps. Eventually, you get to the bottom of the steps, sit. And then as I'm walking from your bottom step to the front and that little corridor, take a couple steps, sit. Yes, treat. Take Take more steps. Sit, yes, treat. And I like to use a clicker for this sort of thing. Yes, because dogs learn a little bit better through the clicker. So now we have exercised her first. We have desensitized her from being overexcited when the harness goes on. We're helping her practice checking in and listening to us, yes. And she's being rewarded for doing so. And she knows she's doing the right thing because she's hearing the click or the yes when she does the thing that we want. And then on the walk, I would do the same thing. Every couple of steps, ask for a sit, ask for a touch or a boop, ask her for a lay down or whatever the case may be. You need to work on your lay down. So make sure you celebrate that a lot. And so eventually you get to the point where she's checking in with you every couple of steps because you're doing this so frequently. That's what she's become conditioned to do. Now, this is a little bit of micromanagement, which is fine because she's just a super duper anxious dog and she just gets so, I think, unspooled and so aroused that she can't focus on anything. So shrinking her world and helping her focus on listening to one or two things can really help her with this and not be so overwhelming. And us as the guardian, yes, is we're not taking her, continuing down the path when she's overly aroused. Now, for the video above, what I'd like you to do is find like a park, a place where, again, there's a nice walking path where people walk their dogs. And you can do it in a neighborhood. I just would prefer not to do it in your neighborhood because this is kind of her territory, and that can make some dogs a little bit more reactive. So and you can do it in somebody else's neighborhood as well, but try to find a place that's the street's not super busy. There's not a ton of distractions like that. And the other thing wrong with that's LA. We're gonna have helicopters and sirens and all sorts of stuff like that. But there's a kid screaming in a stroller. That's gonna stress her out just like it stresses us out. So now we're trying to practice working with creating a positive association with those dogs. That was me leaning back and forth.
Oh,
not this. But if we want her to have a good relationship with other dogs, we're gonna peel away all the other layers of the things that we can control. Because if there's a crying baby or there's a helicopter coming on and then she's trying to look at the other dog, that just makes it too much. And that's an extra factor that's going to work against us. So, and have you ever ridden a roller coaster? Mm-hmm. So when we're on a roller coaster, we're just sitting on our butt. We're really not actively doing anything. But we probably burn like 500 to 700 calories in like 2 minutes because of the intensity of the experience. Often when we see a dog like this, we look at them and they're like, you're just sitting there, you're standing there, you're not doing much. But no, beneath the surface, she's got a lot of stuff going on. So when you're doing the activity that we did above, in the video above, you want to do this in maybe no more than like 20, maybe 30-minute maximum. And that's eclipse the very long version. Really, you want shorter, successful practice sessions that are more frequently. Now, there's a park that's nearby where you can get to pretty frequently. Maybe you do it twice or 3 times a day for maybe 10 minutes each time. Now, you're going to find between, I'm guessing, about 4:30 and 6 o'clock, you're probably going to have a lot of people walking their dogs. So that might be too much for her at first. So at first, you might want to find like a Saturday or Sunday like we're on now so she can practice where there's some dogs, but maybe not so many. Now, the best way to do this, as I mentioned in the video, is to recruit a friend who has a dog that she does not know. And meet up go to Clover Park or wherever it is you want to go and find a park where there's a nice green area. And then you can have her, maybe you're standing here, there's some shrubberies between you and then the dog's on the other side of the shrubberies. Maybe in between the shrubberies, there's little gaps where she can see the other dog for like 2 seconds. So you can have your friend walk back and forth and there's these shrubs or trees or whatever that space out. So she looks and she sees them, click, yes, or click and I get a treat. She looks back and she's in the next gap, click, treat, click, treat. And don't let her meet that dog. Once she meets and becomes friends with that dog, which you're like, oh, I want her to be friends with the dog, you can't use that dog anymore because now she knows who it is. If she pulls or is aroused, she wants to play with it as opposed to being frustrated with it. Now, the idea is we gradually are going to collapse that distance, but we're going to go at her pace. So if she starts whining, whimpering, she won't take a treat. You see her ears are flipped back like they are now. Or she won't sit down. She's drooling. She's panting heavy. Her pupils are dilated. Her tail's straight up. You got to kind of recognize her body language. So if she's telling you that it's too much for her, then you need to move her away or move the other dog away so there's more distance between the two of you. do this so I don't continually knock into your cabinet and knock something over. So this is going to ebb and flow, and as I mentioned in the video above, a lot of it depends on the size of the other, the size and the behavior of the other dog. If you have another dog that's bouncing off the walls, well, you know, and pulling on the leash and barking like crazy, that's going to be harder. If you have another dog that's walking a nice, relaxed, loose leash next to the guardian, that'll be a lot easier. Also, certain breeds might be more of a predisposed than others. So make a list of the types of breeds that she gets reactive to. And you might be able to find a trend. Maybe she just doesn't like Huskies or Boxers or Dalmatians or whatever the case may be. And once you identify that, then you can recruit a friend who has a Dalmatian and create these staged setups. That's really what I do, is I like to cheat. I create a situation where all the factors are in my favor. There's no squirrels around. We were having problems with squirrels when we were outside in the street. Well, that makes it an extra factor. I can't communicate with a squirrel and get it, say, can you give me 5 minutes? I can do that with like a day worker. So if you pick a park or a place like that that you can work at, you have this open space, if there's some kids running around, you go to a different part of the park. But again, try to keep these 5 or 10 minute practice sessions. Now, for her, I think that she is so anxious being outside. And so I think the what I talked about at the beginning of this video of going a couple steps and asking for a sit and clicking and treating, or marking and treating, eventually you get to the point where you're on a walk and you're just doing a ton of this. Sit, click, treat, sit, click, treat, every couple steps, yes. And after a while, she's kind of anticipating this and she's waiting and ready for you to sit. Yes. And like there, if I said sit and she didn't sit, then I would just keep on walking. I would probably turn, if she doesn't sit, you know, you have to ask yourself, is she too aroused, or is there something going on in the environment that's short term? If there's maybe a baby that's crying on a stroller is going to pass by and then she'll sit after that, you can hang out. But usually when I'm walking away from my place, when I get to a certain point where she won't sit, I'm not going to go further. Now, first it might be the bottom of the stairs. After a while, it might be the front of your apartment complex. After a while, it might be the end of your block. You should see these things gradually go, but just like anything else in life, it's going to be ebbs and flows. She's going to have good days and bad days. So she's having not a bad day or not a great day, maybe keep it shorter. Always end on a success. So if you have, you know, let's say a dog comes by and she does really well, and you see 4 more dogs come by and 2 of them are breeds that, you know, she has a problem with, you might want to get her out of there beforehand. The last memory that she has is going to be the brightest memory engram that she's going to draw off of. So if the last thing she remembers was barking and lunging, that's what she's going to be remembering. Now for dogs, anything that happens before they get attention or affection is kind of what happens, or the cause of it. So for her, if she like is out there and she barks at a dog and the other dog goes away, she thinks her bark made them go away. That's why when we're doing the exercise we just got done just talking about, this is called the engage-disengage game, but it's really a desensitization counter-conditioning exercise. She can't bark and lunge. If she does, I call that us getting greedy. We got her too close. We put her in too advanced a situation she was not prepared for, and now she practiced the behavior we don't want. So that's why I would probably recommend, if you can, find 2 or 3 friends who have a dog that's a pretty well-behaved dog that you can have meet up at different parks and practice this for like 10 or 15-minute practice sessions. Now you can also do what's called parallel walking, where we're walking so it's human, dogs on the outside, and you might have to be 5 feet apart, 10 feet apart, 15, 20 feet apart. This is why a park makes a great opportunity to do this, because you can kind of walk, and gradually you walk kind of a triangular shape. You gradually get closer and closer. This might happen over one set walk. This might happen over like a dozen walks. Every dog is going to be unique. So the idea is we want her to practice walking by dogs, and we're marking her not reacting. And that's one thing I want you to keep in the back of your mind. If you're walking with her and something happens that she normally reacts to and she doesn't, I want you to say your marker word and give her a treat or a pet. So we often take for granted, we walk by a dog and she doesn't bark or snarl and we just don't say anything. Well, we're not reinforcing and letting her know this is the desirable behavior. So when she accidentally get this, or if you get it intentionally, make sure you say yes or click and give her that treat, or give her a scratch on her butt or wherever her favorite places are. Okay, so that's basically kind of encapsulating the video above for the reactivity. But there's a lot of stuff in the house that we went over that's going to be a contributor for that. So we start off by going over marker words. The guardian had already been using the marker word, or learned it from a previous trainer, but I don't think was using it consistently. It was also saying good girl a lot. So what I want you to, instead of saying good girl, I want you to replace that with saying yes and not saying anything else. So she comes and sits down to you, yes, and pet her. She lays down, yes, and pet her. And that's that celebrating. So every time she lays down, say yes and pet her, because right now you have difficulty getting her to lay down. Now, when I was working with her, I found that it was easier to get her to lay down on the carpet than it was the hardwood floor. So she might be slipping, or it might be too cool surface. So try to find an area that's, a nice rug, and have her practice doing that. Now, when I'm doing training, I like to imagine that there is a rubber band attached to the dog's mouth. So if I'm the dog and my hand here is from the handler, and I want to get the dog to look in this direction, if I touch a treat to their lips and I go like this, the dog did not track it. The imaginary rubber band is going to pull that treat right back here. So if I want to get the dog to look, what I'm going to do is kind of go like this. You're going to go back and forth. Always keep the treat within an inch of your dog's lips or so when you're trying to lure them into doing something. And so basically, for her, we went over a hand targeting exercise, and we use that as a vehicle to practice the timing. But I'll have that linked above. If I don't have it linked above, let me know, and I can share that video with you. But the hand targeting that we do is just a vehicle for you to practice the timing of using your marker word. And so as soon as she touched her nose in my hand, I said yes, and I put that treat on my hand. Now, this is an alternative way of recalling her, but there's also a way of repositioning her. A lot of times we manually manipulate dogs, and dogs really don't like that. So the more that we can actually get them to turn on their own by having them touch their nose in my hand and then move my hand this way or this way, I can get the dog to manipulate themselves. Now, we also went over cues, and I want the guardian, because he's single, to work on being mindful and only using one cue for each action. So lay, or find it, or come, or whatever, instead of come here, over here, girl, dog's name. That just makes it more words that she needs to listen to. It can contribute to her stress, because now she's got to listen for more and pay more closer attention. Yes, I'm talking about you, sweetheart. Yes. All right, so using the marker word is something I want you to get in the habit of doing. Instead of saying good dog, there you go. And he just did a good job right there. So he was petting, and she pawed at him, and he didn't like that, so he withdrew his petting. Now, is it wrong for dogs to paw? No, she's really probably just saying, that feels really good, man. Why don't you keep on doing it? Or I'll pet you a little bit too. But it's a personal preference. If you don't want her to do that, then you can just simply detach and disengage. And then when she put her paw back down, go back and re-engaging with her. But a lot of us, like I said, we absent the dog paws at us, we reach over and pet him when we're watching TV, we don't realize we're training the dog. Anything your dog's doing right before you give them attention or affection or a treat is what you're specifically rewarding them to do. Okay, let me see. So I guess I'm going to back up a little bit. When I first started this session, I call this greeting protocol 1. It's a really elaborate way of saying I leave a treat trail. And then I'm sitting down. So the dog approaches me, I'm not standing. For dogs, standing is an authoritative position. So I would have you put a treat trail just from really when you come out from the shrubberies, that little kind of channel from the side of your apartments. So when you come out and you start emerging towards going to the street, put a treat trail there. Start them off about 6 inches apart for the first 4 or 5 treats. Then go to about a foot apart for about 2 or 3 treats, and about 1.5 feet to 2 feet apart. Yes. And get to the point where when you get to the point where she's going to be able to see the person that's sitting against that wall where I was sitting, right before she's about to see them, put a small pile of treats. So when she comes around the corner and she sees the person, she's got a bunch of treats in her mouth. Now, what I would recommend you do is do this, and I think I counted about 26 treats or something like that on the floor. So if you're doing this, probably can feed her a little bit lighter meal for her next meal. So I'd practice this maybe once a day for the next couple days. And then do you have any friends that she likes?
Yes.
Humans? So then what I would do is arrange to have the friend that she likes be there at the end of it. So now she's practiced, she did the treat trail with me, it was a good thing. Now she's practiced it a couple times and she's getting used to it. She's like, oh, I like this game. I sniff and get a bunch of treats on the ground. And when she gets good at that, she practices it 2, 4, 6 times. Then we have one of our friends sitting there. She doesn't know that the friend's there, but she comes out and she's like, oh, shoot, it's you. So again, we're making this into a confidence building experience that she knows what to anticipate, and it's something fun. And at the end of it is somebody that she knows. After a while, the person at the end of it is going to be somebody that she doesn't know. Now, when she meets that person, they should have treats in their hand, and they should hold their hand out to a flat hand, palm to the sky like this. Let her lick the treat off, and when she licks the treat off, hold your hand there. Don't move your hand away. she'll often come back and lick again a second time. And do that for about 5 or 6 treats. And if you think when you're holding the leash for Dolly, if she's going to nip the person, don't let her get close enough to him. And again, you can exercise her ahead of time to set this up, set her up for success. And so after that, when she's going to get up, I usually like to have the dog have a little bit of feet away, or you could just tell her to sit, or just give her a treat and the person stands up. Then the person gives her another treat. And then you go for a little mini walk. We only went 2 houses. Then we turn around and walk back in. But every couple of steps, I'm asking her to sit and have your friend offer a treat with a flat hand because she doesn't have a great soft mouth. And then when you start coming through the gauntlet, through that alleyway, do that every couple steps as well. We get to the top of the steps before you open the door, have her sit, and then the guest gives her a treat. You open the door, and then you guys all walk inside. As soon as you walk in, before you close the door, she tells her to sit, and the guest gives her another treat. And then you close the door, guest tells her to sit and gives her another treat. I want to make sure that we carry over the momentum from outside to inside. And the idea is now you met the person outside, and she came to the person as opposed to the other person coming in and invading her space in a confined area. Okay, and so get in the habit of doing that, introducing her that way. And I would introduce her to your neighbor across the hall that way so that she knows that neighbor. And buy your neighbor a handful of treats. And so eventually you can get to the point where she opens the door, maybe your neighbor is tossing treats. She catches really well. That's a great game for people that she's fearful of to engage with her. Because everybody's going to want to pet her. She's a good-looking girl. She does not like being petted. That's why we went over dog body language. So for her, if you see her ears going back, that's her way of saying she's a little uncomfortable. She's licking her lips right now, which can also be a sign of discomfort. Yawning could also be a sign of that. And so if you see her, and also her eyes, if you look at her eyes right now, see her eyes are not, they're kind of, I don't want to say soft, but they're not hard eyes. And dogs often, when they really like something, they'll give what we call sleepy eyes. They'll kind of start squinting. If you see that, she's doing a little bit there. That's a sign of really liking things. If you see her eyes big and wide and not blinking, that's a big, I am aroused, or I'm worked up, or I'm anxious, or something is not comfortable for me, especially with the ears back. Dogs are normally what I call wiggly and jiggly. So if you see her kind of going like she's walking down the street with an open mouth, she goes, yeah, exactly. That's a big warning. Going from an open mouth to a closed mouth, going from wiggly and jiggly to still and staring, those are big warnings. So those are the first warnings the dog usually gives. So if she sees another dog and offers those things, and then you turn around and walk the other direction or cross the street or increase distance for her, she does not need to go to the next level and bark and lunge and growl. Now also the guardian had done what a lot of people do, and the dog barks and growls and lunges, is we tell them, no, bad dog, stop doing that. Well, if I'm uncomfortable and I tell my partner I'm uncomfortable, my partner says, yeah, put your big boy pants on, well, she's not supporting me. And that's going to make me feel more uncomfortable, more insecure, probably make me more on alert. So when a dog is reactive, we never want to punish them. I always interpret a dog growling or barking or baring its teeth as saying, I feel uncomfortable or I disagree. So when you look through that lens, you kind of think you have a little bit more patience and tolerance for what the dog is going through. And the dog understands it. Now for some dogs, when they bark and lunge, you say, thank you, Dolly. Okay, finally, he listened to me, man. I've been barking here for 5 minutes. Not all, but for some dogs, that does the trick. Unless the thing is continually coming towards them. Now, when we're walking down the street, I'm like walking towards you, and let's say the camera's a dog. I think we're just walking past that dog, and Dolly's like, you're leading me to doom. So what do we do outside? We walked around that car at one point so that she couldn't see the other dog. So if you don't have treats with you, or you don't have enough space, pay attention to your environment. If you're coming to a choke point and you're both going to be cornered, stop, wave the other person through, walk in the street, walk around a car. This gives her the ability to not have to deal with the situation herself because you're managing it for her. The more you manage it for her, the less she has to do. Now, I'd also like you to practice the find it. That's basically what we did here in the cookie in the corner exercise here, but I started at the beginning of the session. Have really good treats. The treat trainers she seemed to like. Once a block, I'd like you to stop and just touch her nose with the treat, and when she's looking, say find it and throw it on the ground. And make sure she's looking in that direction. She licks it up, says yes, and then do it again. And then do it again. And so you do this maybe 2 to 6 or 8 treats, and then you keep on your walk. So every once in a while, she's like, Dad sometimes just likes to throw things down. Well, maybe you're doing it because there's another dog coming around the corner. Maybe so you're getting her to sniff the ground and to disengage. It's a bit of a distraction, which is okay. Distraction sometimes is appropriate. We'd like to work on fixing it like we did in the video above. but sometimes we're just not in a great setup for it. It's just better. We don't want her to practice the unwanted behaviors. So leave it is a great way. Now, I like to do something called a leave it away. So let's say that I'm Dolly and there's a dog walking down the street this way and I see the dog, but it's far enough away that I don't perceive it to be a threat. I might touch a treat to Dolly's nose and then drop it right here. When she goes to get this one, I should touch her treat with another one. I toss it this way, about a foot. And the other dog's coming from this direction. So now as a Dolly, I got this one, then I turned away from the other dog to get this one. And then you throw another one, you say find it and throw it 3 feet that way. I move this way 3 feet, and then you do that again to 4 feet. You just moved your dog 10 feet away from here, 10 feet away from the other dogs walking by here. So instead of the dog walking towards us, we did a T-shaped maneuver and we walked away in between an apartment building or between shrubberies or whatever it is. So you're increasing the distance by playing this game, and then she's getting the treats, and you've increased the distance to allow the other dog to walk by so she doesn't have to bark or grunge or growl. So again, this is more of a maintenance thing, but if you do it only when you see another dog, she's going to be so aroused she won't want to do it. So like we talked about at the beginning of this video, practicing putting the leash on, we do it when we don't need to, and there's no excitement. So if once a block you're practicing the leave it or the leave it away, when you do it, she might not even be looking for the other dog. She's just as happy to go in the other direction and get those treats, and then you took care of the situation for her. Now, getting back to the stuff we went over inside, we also went over basically celebrating, rewarding her when she offers desired behaviors. This is one of the easiest things that I teach my clients that listen and follow this find it has a really profound impact on the dog, but only if you get in a habit of doing it on the regular. So if you only do it every once in a while, it doesn't work. Dogs learn through consistency, repetition, and good timing. You have about 2 seconds to make a connection with whatever the dog has done. So if every time the dog comes up to you and sits down, you say yes and pet, lays down, yes, eye contact, yes, goes to the dog bed, yes, drops a toy, picks up a toy, drinks water, goes outside, well, anything that's desirable, say yes, but the yes needs to be followed by a pet or a treat or attention, some sort of reinforcement. So if she goes outside and you're sitting here and you can't really get over there, she goes and say, yes, good girl, Dolly. You know, and again, I said not to say good girl, but right there, the good girl would be something I would use because I can't get to her. So I'm throwing a little bit of a verbal. Now, I also like to say like this is my dog. This is actually applause if you're deaf, but I use this for dogs. So I go like this and give my dog a treat. Treat. So after a while, the dog goes like this, like that's almost like synonymous with getting a treat. So this way, she goes over there, I say, and she knows what's going on. She knows that I'm happy or pleased about what's going on. So the more that we reward our dogs for the things that we want, the more that our dog will offer those behaviors to get our attention. Remember, all attention for dogs is rewarding. We call it validating, but that means that yelling at your dog, no, bad dog, for chewing up your slipper is the same thing as giving your dog a treat for chewing that slipper. And if you're really abusive, then you're in a damaged relationship with a dog. You know, you just verbally get to that point across, but now your dog is kind of fearing what to grab. So instead, when your dog grabs a toy, you say yes. Now that's something I would actually cultivate is, I know the dog park, if she has a squeaker in her mouth, she does better. So I have a dog named Zeke that's a German Shepherd mix, and he gets just, when he gets really, he doesn't like things, he barks like crazy and like for 5 minutes and just is annoying. So one of the things that I've done is now I teach him to snag. So I get bark box. Every time we get a new bark box, I throw the new toy on the ground, and as I throw it, I know he's going to go get it. I say snag as I throw it. He runs over, grabs it, and picks up the squeaker toy. I say yes as soon as he gets it, and he walks around squeaking it. I'm occupying his mouth. And I'm also introducing the cue. Snag means go grab something with your mouth. So if she's barking about something, you say snag, she goes grab it, and it's got a squeaker. She can squeak to communicate what she wants as opposed to the barking. Now another little tip, I said I mentioned this for the door. So something we do is called counter conditioning, and I have enough treats. Dolly, so I'm gonna have you do me a favor and just know right where you're at. I'm just gonna sit down. I'm gonna have you knock on your desk, or just your table there. You're supposed to be barking for that.
I know, what's going on?
Well, she's more interested in the treats. So what I would do is you can recruit somebody to do this, or you can have a recording of it. So go ahead and knock once lightly. And knock once again a little bit more intensely. And again.
Should I go over there and like...
You can go to the door and knock there, sure. There we go. That was closer. Now, in order to do this, for this to work, she can be aroused. And so you saw when you got closer to the door, and that's closer to the sound, she was aroused. So this time I'm going to have you knock a lot lighter. Dolly, sit. Dolly, there you go. All right, knock a little bit more intense. No, you can where you're at is fine. That was way too intense.
Oh.
So we want to go gradually, like maybe a very minor jump in intensity. So knock on the wall just one time. Okay. So she barks. I'm not going to give her a treat for that. So we're going to knock lighter this time. Molly. Okay, go ahead. Even lighter. One finger. Hold on. Let me give her a set. Molly, come here. Sit. Now you're just in a habit. Come here. Sit. One finger. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the sound that she normally barks at. Because when she hears that sound and she barks at, she's like, I hear you. I want you to stop or go away. And eventually it works. And this reinforces, but you're in an apartment. You don't want to have your dog barking. So what you would do is record that sound. Go ahead and give me another one finger. So she barked. Now, this is not the ideal time to do this because, again, this is the end of a 3-hour session. We did the roller coaster being outside with dogs. This is not, we're setting her up to fail here. So what you normally do is, and if that knocking sound is too much, you might have a recording. Dolly, find it. You might have a recording of that sound and play that sound, and then give her a treat. Then play it a little bit louder, give her a treat. Now, I don't always raise the volume each time, but basically I want to start off with low enough where she hears it and it's a simulate of whatever the sound is she normally barks at, but not the full bore. Because if she barks and we reward her, then we're rewarding her for barking. So you might actually put your phone out there and record your neighbor walking up those stairs. And then you could play that sound and each step and have the neighbor kind of go step, pause, step, pause. Or you can pause it yourself. So step, treat, step, treat, step, treat. So and gradually raise that level. And so now it's like when the neighbor comes, I get a treat after each sound. Every she opens her door, I get a treat after that. So instead of barking and say, I don't like that, actually, can you open and close your door some more? Because I get more treats for that. So we're making it into a positive. But if she barks and reacts, it is too intense and it does not work. So don't get greedy. Go at her pace. Okay, and you can do those sounds outside. We hear some people going through the trash right now. The trash people here, people walking down the corridor. Make a list of all the sounds she reacts to and systematically practice through these things. So instead of her barking at this sort of thing, and you see her ears are back, so she's aware of it, but she's not barking at it. And when it gets to the point where she hears those things, and so if I'll get one more sound, I'll do it right here. And so I'm ready to go, but I don't want to hold the treat in front of her nose. So there was a sound, it was a different sound, but the sound is preceded or is followed by a treat. So I like the sounds because it means I'm going to get a treat. Okay, so getting back to celebrating is rewarding her when she does desirable behaviors on her own without us asking her to do them. We're going to say the marker word or click, and then we're going to pet her under her chin or on her shoulders or her chest. Now, the flip side of that is if she paws at you, she's saying, give me your attention, damn it. So if she paws at you, we're going to give her the concept of the do-over. So give me your attention. Sit. Yes. And then I can pet her. If I say sit and she doesn't sit, after about 2 seconds, I go back to doing my taxes, watching TV, playing the guitar, looking at my telescope, whatever it is. So I'm back to doing what I want to do. If you don't want to do what I want, that's totally fine, but there's no reward for you. And after a while, she'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention, because normally when she sits, you give her attention, and now you're directing her into a sit or a down, and she's getting attention for that. Now, we also went, and these are celebrating is when she does it on her own, and I call it manners when we're redirecting her into a desirable behavior when she offers an undesirable behavior, to condition her that I want you to sit to ask for my attention, not to paw at me. Now, we also went over some creative forms of exercise. So she likes to play fetch. So I would, when you're playing fetch, I would grab the object. There you go. Dolly, sit. Fetch. Yes. Sit. Fetch. I have a treat here. Yes. I didn't ask her to drop. She saw the treat there. And if she wants to stop and fart around with it, that's fine. It's not military school. She can have fun. But what I'm doing is I'm going to tell her, sit. Molly, sit. Sit. Only after she sits do I pick up the item. And I'm not snatching it. And if she goes to grab it, I'm not going to fight her for it or play the game the way that I want. I'm going to build in a little impulse control through this game. So she sits, I say, I pick it up and I say fetch as I throw it. When she grabs it, I don't say anything. When she comes back to me, I hold her out a treat. When she drops it, I say yes, and I give her that treat. So after a while, now you've created a game where you're asking her to practice a little bit of a tip of her hat of deference to your authority, to practice a little self-control, and it's a nice way to burn energy. Now you can sit outside on your deck and throw a ball down this gauntlet back and forth. That's a nice way to burn some energy. And you might count the number of fetches. Maybe this 10 fetches before this activity, 25 fetches before meeting a new person, 14 fetches before we practice the click with looks exercise we did in the video above. Finding out what the amount of exercise she needs and getting her that exercise before can really help her. But here's the key. She has to have 10 or 15 minutes of rest between the exercise and the next thing that happens. Otherwise, she will be worse behaved. And driving the car does not count. So, all right. So let me see. You can also, you have the retractable leash, which I'm not a big fan of unless you're taking her to a specific place. So if you're going to take her to a place where she can do that, I would have a straight leash that you walk her there and then pull out the retractable leash, put her on a retractable leash just for the area you want her running on that loose, having the area to run. I would also look for a little bit of a leash connector that is made out of bungee. So that when she gets to the end of that, it doesn't snap her neck, which is going to be hard on her joints and also an unpleasant experience for her. Now you can use that for, yes, you're such a sweetie. You can use that for doing a doggy stairmaster. So stay at the top of your stairs, throw a ball or a treat to the bottom of the stairs. When you have that retractable leash, she runs to the bottom and gets it. Call her back at the top. You say yes, give her a treat. Then tell her to sit, throw it back down. So each down up is 1. And again, count the number of repetitions. You might find a certain number of reps set her up for success for X, Y, or Z. But this way, if your neighborhood's too busy or there's too many people or too many dogs, you can exercise her up and down those stairs, and that's pretty quick. Now remember, on walks, let her sniff as long as it's safe to do so. And you can also play tug of war. And since she has bad bite inhibition, I would get a big rope and play tug of war with her. And anytime she touches you with her teeth, you just drop it and the game is over. And that's a nice way for her to develop bite inhibition. Now we also went over the bite inhibition lesson by either taking a treat and folding it under your flap. As soon as she licks, I say yes and release the treat. Or I can just hold one under my thumb. She's using her teeth. Licks. Yes. And then I open and release. Now you can also take a fork, put one of these treats on it, and offer it to her. She's going to chomp down on it. She's not going to like the feeling of that metal. And then she'll back off and she'll lick and take the treat off with her lips. When she does, you say yes. When she does that consistently, then you would say gentle as you offer your hand or as you offer the fork, she licks it off. So what you're doing is teaching her gentle means don't use your teeth. Remember, the more aroused she is, the more excited she is, the more toothy she's going to be. So you might want to practice this and level up. Practice in the house when she's nice and calm, and then start practicing a little bit more excited. Like talk to her in a baby voice, "Ooh, it's a good girl," and then try to do it with the fork, and and get her that dexterity so she can have more self-control in different scenarios. Okay, we also went over, and that's physical exercise. There's also mental stimulation. I recommend the Guardian get a snuffle mat. The one that I like is the RUNDA, Runda. And it's oblong, rectangular, and so it's got these tassels, and it's got a band around. So I flip it over, all the tassels are going down, I flip it back up, and I take my food, and I kind of waterfall it, let it fall so it goes into those cracks. Now she's got to use her nose to find it and lick up that treat. Now you could probably do it with the freeze-dried stuff and just give her a bowl of water afterwards, or you could hydrate it and put it in there. You'll probably have to wash the snuffle mat, which is fine, they're designed to wash. But now she's working for her food. This drains energy. This makes feeding her like a short walk. You feed her twice a day. That's 2 short walks that you get through an activity you're going to do anyways. So we can also get her one of those Omega Paw tricky treat balls, the orange ball, and give her a snack with maybe some dry kibble in that. when you have a guest come over, or maybe in the middle of the day. Another way to mentally stimulate her. You can also do, there's a lot of enrichment games. You can look up canine enrichment or dog enrichment. And so simple things like maybe taking a toilet paper tube or a paper towel tube with a couple of paper towels, and you put some kibble in there, and you stuff it all in the back of the tube, and she's got to pull the paper towel out and find the kibble. Some people do this with boxes, and they fill it up with like some kind of, I call it doggy confetti, which is shredded paper, but shredded pieces maybe like 4 inches, 5 inches long, and 1 inch wide. Oh, thank you. You want to play fetch? Drop? You want to play tug of war? That's okay. And sometimes when she brings you things, she wants you just to see what she's got. She doesn't want you to have it. Sometimes she's offering it to you as a gift. Sometimes she wants to play tug of war. Sometimes she wants to play fetch. So be careful, because a lot of times we think just dogs always want us to steal their stuff. Not always the case. So for mental stimulation, if we're feeding her out of those toys, that's a couple of things that we can do, ways to get a little physical exercise. We can also sit, fetch. We can also, let me play. We went over Cookie in the Corner, and you can do scent games. I'd like you to Google and find 2 or 3 scent games. Now, Cookie in the Corner is just the introduction. So it means find it means go look for treats. But eventually you can hide a bait lure around your house somewhere, and she's got to use her nose to go find that. You don't have the biggest place, so it'll, just have to get creative about where you hide stuff. Put her in your room, put her in a sit stay, and then go hide maybe 3 treats or 3 bait lures, and she's got to find it. You can play hot and cold, where she gets closer to something. You say warmer, cold, whatever it is. There's a whole bunch of scent games that you can find, and so Google and find a handful of those that you can practice every day on the regular. Then there's also training. Training is a great way to drain energy because they're using a different muscle. And remember, the nose controls about 60% of their brain. So scent games also drain a lot of energy because they're using their dominant sense. I'd like you to come up with a rhythm, that's something that works for your lifestyle. And so maybe you get up in the morning and you do a game of fetch or up downs on the stairs. And then you give her 10, while she's resting, recovering, you're taking your morning shower. You get done, you feed her out of a snuffle mat. And that takes her 10, 15 minutes to finish eating. She gets done with that. She takes a little bit, and she's like, man, I know I've only been up a half an hour, but I got to take a nap. So she takes a little nap or just kind of hangs out, and you go do a little bit of work. An hour or 2 later in, maybe you do a little bit of training for 3 minutes, always end on a good one. Go back to working. An hour or 2 later, maybe you do fetch or the Stairmaster or go for a quick potty with some find-its on the street. The idea is to alternate so you have mental stimulation, physical exercise happening every 2 to 4 hours, and dialing in until you find the right amount where Dolly's getting her needs filled. Now here she seems pretty relaxed, but on the street she's pretty anxious. So I'd like you to practice the stuff we went over, but she may be a candidate for medication like fluoxetine. Oh, excuse me. Oh, it was an early morning. Now I'd like to, because she seems pretty relaxed here, and the stuff that we're going over might have a profound impact on her. And so we might not need fluoxetine, and I'd prefer not to put it on her if we don't need to. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't want to if we don't need to. Now, we went over cutoff signals. Come here, Molly. So sit. So if you watch her head and her ears, she's saying, I don't like that movement that I'm doing. So what we usually tell people, if people want to meet her, our parents usually say, hey, will you hold your hand out so I can sniff you? So go like this, Molly. She just said, yeah, you have my consent to pet me, but she just turned away. She said, now I've taken it away. Just like us, dogs should have autonomy over their body. So if somebody wants to meet her, they hold their hand out. If she turns her head away like that, the person should not pet. So if somebody wants to meet her, just say, yeah, well, she's a rescue dog, so sometimes she's a little squirrely who she wants to meet. If you want to meet her, we just ask you to hold your hand out. Don't ever have anybody hold their hand out if you think she's going to bite them, because that will cause a bite. But if they hold it out, and notice how it's back. The palm of my hand is facing me, and I'm holding it nose level. And if she turns her head to the side, then you just say, oh, shoot, I forgot. We just were at the vet. She has ringworm. It's contagious for humans. Nobody's supposed to pet her. They will give you a dirty look and back away 3 steps. That's fine because you're taking care of the situation. I don't have to bark at people. My human makes sure that people I don't want to pet don't come near me. So it's a little white lie, but it's okay. Now, dog body language includes, like I said, lowering the head. Well, I went through, the first set of them at the beginning. Let me just compartmentalize them all here. So she flips her ears back. She turned her head to the side. She kind of was like, what are you doing up there when we reach over her head? A lot of dogs will also give you whale eye. So the freeze, you see a lot of white in their eye. Their eyes are big like saucers, like I talked about. Sometimes they're breathing heavy or holding their breath. The tail can often be straight up or quivering very fast straight up. Usually for the tail, going up is more alerting, territorial, that sort of family. If this is the spine and this is the dog's head and this is the tail, you really would like to see the tail in the middle. This is a nice balanced, relaxed tail. If you see it down, that could also be relaxed, but if you see it tucked between the legs, that's insecure. Nobody should try to pet her when her ears are back, she's licking her lips, she's, her tail's tucked. She's saying, I'm uncomfortable. So don't force her to meet somebody if she doesn't like that. Yes, you're liking the celebrate game, huh? Okay, so, and then is the dog leaning towards somebody, leaning away? Is she refusing to come, or is she refusing to look at that person? Don't force her to interact with people that she doesn't want to interact with, because that kind of damages your relationship with her, and also tells her, you're going to force me to do things I don't want to do on a walk. So if you need to, just increase distance. That's the best thing to do. All right, what else do we want to go over? The Guardian here had a couple rules, and I like rules, but I would prefer that I really make more of the rules. I mean, one of them is like sit, and then did the trainer tell you that you have to go through the door first?
No.
Okay,
Yep.
it's a fallacy. You don't have to. But I like to incorporate little sits and downs and things like that at times as a way of almost the dog tipping their cap to me. So if you're going to take her, put her on the leash, sit before I even pick up the leash. If I want to play fetch, you're going to sit before I pick up the toy to throw you. I'm asking you to sit before I pet you. Do you have to ask her to sit for everything? Absolutely not. I mean, like I said, you could celebrate and you just pet her because you love her and you want to pet her. That's totally fine. But I'd like you to try to get in the mode of at least some of the time asking her to do something. If she does it, you say your marker word and pet her. If she doesn't do it, you go back to doing what she was doing. And so after a while, she kind of gets a little bit more, it helps create what I call a healthy leader-follower dynamic. And, you know, I like to think of dogs as a member of our family, just not the same rank or status as the adults, kind of like children in a family group. You know, I have a voice, I have a vote, I just don't have the final vote. Okay, let me see what else. This is getting a long one, so I want to kind of wrap things up. So asking her to do some sits and downs, like and incorporate some rules like that'll help. But remember, if you ask her to sit, she won't sit. That could be her way of saying, I don't feel comfortable. So in order to force her to sit around things, especially around other dogs or people, letting her be running around is going to make her feel a lot more comfortable. I'm trying to think is there anything else you want me to cover?
That was it. Yeah, that was amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Molly. Come here, Molly. Come here. Come here. We got to show everybody what a good-looking girl you are. All right, I'll invite you to come up, which I normally don't do. I want you from the side, though. Come here. This is my buddy, Molly. And this is Dolly. Excuse me. I don't want to say I was calling you Molly. This is Dolly. And this is Dolly Sit. This is Dolly's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.